Welcome to the Sponsored Rider Club podcast, where we unlock the secrets to motorsports sponsorship. Here's your host, Josh Weesey.
All right, well, here it is. Episode 42 of the Sponsored Rider Club podcast is here. This podcast is powered by ImpactFuel.org. My name is Josh Weesey. I'm your host. I'm here to guide you through the complexities of motorsports sponsorship. Our guest today to help me out with that is Pro Motocross and Pro Supercross racer John Short. Now, before we get into the structure of the podcast and the interview with John, I have a few things to talk to you about. So first off, I want to get your feedback and show iTunes this podcast is the real deal. So head on over to iTunes, leave a rating and review. And while you're over there, subscribe. Whatever podcast player you're on, go ahead and hit that little baby subscribe button so that you don't miss our upcoming guests. Now, next thing I want to talk to you about is our two amazing sponsors for this podcast. You will hear more about them before we get in Heat 2, but they are TopThePodium.com and Bold Racing. Now, if you ever have questions or guest recommendations, go ahead and shoot me an email, podcast@impactfuel.org. Love getting recommendations from that standpoint. And if you ever just want to reach out and chat, that's a good way to get a hold of me. Now, the structure of this podcast is similar to other ones. It's set up like a race. We'll begin with the qualifier, which is the basic introduction. In Heat 1, we'll talk about John's background. In Heat 2, we'll discuss sponsorship tactics and strategies. Then in the main event, we'll discuss mindset, and we'll end at the finish line where we'll get some closing comments and contact information for John. Now, without further ado, I'd like to get going with the podcast. Here we go. All right, well, welcome everybody to this episode of the Sponsored Rider Club podcast. My name is Josh Weesey. I'm here with John Short today, and together we're going to guide you through the complexities of motorsports sponsorship. Let's kick it off with you, John. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, thanks for having me on. I'm John Short. I'm 22 years old. I'm from Pilot Point, Texas. I race the Pro Supercross, Pro Motocross series, and just been doing that the past couple of seasons, trying to kind of see how far I can go in that, see if I can reach some of my goals.
No, that's awesome. And actually, I want you to save this for the end, but we are going to talk a little bit about some goals in the main event. So we'll hold that one for now, but I do want to hear more about that as we continue on. Well, cool. The next thing I want to do is dive into your background more, learn a little bit more about your story. So I guess first off, how did you get started in the motorsports industry?
As far as just riding motorcycles and the whole thing in general, my dad started riding. He got a dirt bike when I was, just a kid, maybe 1 or 2 years old, and he got into it. So naturally, the first thing he did was get me a PW50, and I started in the backyard when I was 3.
Okay.
It was kind of like just from there, obviously I grew a passion for it, and we did that as a family for many years, just for fun, just camping, trail riding, small little races here and there. I actually raced a few cross-country races, up until I was 13 or so. So, it just started as a family deal, really.
That's good. I'm a little disappointed, though. You waited all the way until you were 3 years old. I really try to encourage my listeners to start racing at 5-6 months old, but that's fine if you had to wait until you were 3. That's fine.
It's kind of it's funny you mention that, though, because I rode my dirt bike before I ever rode a bicycle. So.
Yes, yeah. It's so funny to hear that, and actually it's a common thing to hear on this podcast as well. But my brother used to race motocross, and that's how he was. He started riding a dirt bike, a little 50 when he was like 3 or 4, and he couldn't ride a regular bicycle yet. And I don't know, it's pretty incredible.
No, it's interesting for sure. We've got videos from my mom would always film us when I was little, and my dad was teaching me to ride. So there's film of me running into fences and kind of learning. So it's entertaining.
Yeah, but lucky you don't crash anymore, right? You got all that out of the way when you were young.
Man, I wish it was all out of the way. I'm actually sitting here right now with a cast on my arm. I had surgery last Tuesday to fix up a wrist injury. So.
Yeah. Oh, goodness. Well, I have surgeries for things like that too, but it's usually for just walking funny or falling down the stairs or something. But Not for riding a dirt bike. But hey, enough about me. Let's hear a little bit more about you. So you had a family thing, you're doing a lot of trail riding, getting comfortable on your bike. What was next? Like, what's the kind of the rest of the path to get you from that point to where you're at today?
So I guess pretty much when I was 10 to 13, 14, I started racing the trail riding series like enduros and cross countries around North Texas. I started doing all the series and kind of competing and enjoying the competition. And obviously I watched the pros on TV racing Supercross and motocross, being as that's like the premier race series. And I just told my dad one day I really want to see if I have what it takes to do that. And we started going to amateur nationals when I was about 14. I started riding motocross and basically kind of taking it more serious, like a job, working out, training, riding during the week. We started trying to qualify for Loretta Lynn's on 85s when I was 14, and pretty much just kind of at that point made it a goal to, let's make it into the pro ranks and see if we can see what we can accomplish as a professional.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So when you were kind of watching these Supercross, motocross racers, who were the people at that time that you kind of looked up to from a race standpoint?
Well, when I was younger, and I very first started riding when I was 5 or 3, around that time, it was always Jeremy McGrath.
Yep.
Obviously early 2000s, right around the time he was big, and but I always really enjoyed watching James Stewart, Ricky Carmichael, Kevin Windham, Pastrana's. He's a big deal to me. Like, I don't know, I just enjoy watching anything he does, whether it's freestyle, rally, Supercross. So those are some of the names that I always remember seeing and looking up to.
Yeah, I'm not surprised to hear any of those names. And actually, Travis Pastrana, I was very fortunate. Couple weeks back now, I got to meet him. I got to meet him in person and do a live interview. That, if people are interested in hearing that, it's published on episode 37 of this podcast.
Yeah, I'll have to go listen to that. He seems like he's probably a really cool guy to get to know and be around.
Yeah, he was awesome. I mean, I ran into him, at one point where we had a little interview scheduled and got a couple minutes with him then, and he was just very down to earth. I mean, I didn't even initiate the conversation. He was like, "Hey, how are you today?" and shook my hand and kind of asked me a few things, and then we got into the interview after that. And then I ran into him later on that day, just completely random, and he talked to me for a little bit then, and he did that all day. I mean, you'd see him walk up to somebody and just randomly start talking to him, and it was really cool to kind of watch him interact and watch how much he really valued his fans and how much he really wanted to give back to them.
Yeah, I think that's evident throughout his whole career.
Mm-hmm,
and interviews and watching him, the way he carries himself at the event. So
Certainly. Well, cool. I wanted to ask that question then. Usually I ask that later on, but you kind of brought it up and made me think like, well, who are the racers that you originally kind of idolized? So that's good to hear those names. Really awesome people there. So cool. Well, so after that you got into got a little bit more serious about racing, and what was next?
Well, at that time I was obviously still in school, so school was my priority. But I mean, if I wasn't in school, I wasn't hanging out with friends. I mean, all I was doing was after school training. I had a little track at my house and working out, and that was pretty much really all I wanted to do was race, get better, compete. I just was consumed with it. So was just I really wanted to work my way up through the amateur ranks and get noticed, as a top amateur rider at that time.
Yeah, certainly. Well, let's bring it to the present. I mean, tell us about, the series you're racing now and maybe even a little bit about your bike.
Yeah, we currently just finished the Outdoor National Series. I raced Supercross, I raced the 250 East Coast Series. And I just finished the Outdoor National Series. I rode 9 of the events this summer out of the 12. So I got to do the majority of them. I'm not like a part of a factory team or anything. I do it as a privateer, but fortunately I've got some, just great friends and sponsors that enable me to do this without having a contract of some sort, a big factory contract or anything.
Mm-hmm. So by chance, did you ever make it over to Ford Field in Detroit, Michigan?
I did. I raced in Detroit this year.
This year? Okay, I was there then.
Yes,
I was
sir.
cheering you on from the stands. I just didn't know it at the time.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but I think that was a pretty decent weekend for me. I think I was in the main event that weekend in the 250 class. So.
Oh, and that was, if I remember correctly, the 250 and the 450 that were just like amazing events, amazing main events. It was like some of the best. I don't know, probably the best that I've seen. So there you go. We were in the same room together. We didn't even know that we'd be chatting one day.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Well, cool. So yeah, you're racing now. What bike are you racing?
I raced the Suzuki in Supercross, and then I was able to get some a little more support from Yamaha. Not really from Yamaha. It was actually from a dealership, Maxim Honda Yamaha.
Yep.
And they helped me with a couple bikes. So I raced this summer on a Yamaha 450.
Okay.
It was pretty much a stock motorcycle other than the suspension. Jim Lewis at Merge Racing has helped me out a ton over the years. So we just tried to dial the suspension in on that thing the best we could and go racing and try and keep up with the factory guys.
Yeah, certainly. Well, that's cool stuff, man. Are there any like key experiences or accomplishments that you'd like to share with the audience?
I had a few good amateur races. I had a podium finish at Loretta Lynn's, a top 5 finish in the A class at Loretta Lynn's. When I turned pro in 2015, it wasn't the easiest transition. I was a 25th place guy. And this year I was able to pretty much, every weekend walk away with a top 15 finish.
Yeah.
Maybe not overall, but I had some really good motos, some 13th, beat some fast riders. So I guess the moral of the story is I'm progressing. So that's good for me because I've worked really hard. So.
It's good for anybody. We talked a lot about this a lot in episode 38 with Rathina Gomer. She's a drifter, if you don't know about her. And we talked about something called compare and despair mentality. And basically, the idea of it is that the only person you should be comparing yourself to is yourself yesterday. So if you compare yourself to somebody else out in the world, that there's always going to be someone out there that you're gonna maybe think that I'm not doing as good as them, and then it can lead to despair. But if you look at yourself yesterday and say, "Yep, I did better than yesterday. Like I've improved, I've progressed," that's where you want to be at from a mindset standpoint.
Yeah, that's an awesome outlook because it's easy to get consumed with what other riders or what other people are doing within the industry. So it's the one way to track progress is like you said, look at where you were yesterday and seeing if you're heading in the right direction.
Yeah, exactly. Well, cool. Hey, that was kind of, we hopped like into mindset a couple times on that one. That's supposed to be main event, but that's okay. That's okay. I took us there. But I'm going to take us back to the next part of this podcast, which is Heat 2. So before I get there, though, I do want to take a quick moment to thank the sponsors for this podcast. All right, well, since you're listening to this podcast, I know that you want to learn better ways to market yourself in the motorsports industry, and that's why I'm going to talk next about TopThePodium.com. So TopThePodium.com, they are experts in social media, web design, sponsorship, and consulting in this motorsports industry. And they know what they're doing. They've been around. They got experience. They're racers themselves. They're good with graphics and web design, so they can help you out with those things. They can help generate autograph posters and make them look professional. They can help you out putting together a sponsorship proposal. Maybe it's a press release or race reports. You can get assistance there. Email marketing, website design. I mean, all sorts of different stuff. What I need you to do, though, is check them out. So you can go over to topthepodium.com. You can email them, info@topthepodium.com. Check them out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and definitely utilize this resource so you can learn how to attract and retain sponsors and look great in the process. I think you will all agree with me on this one. One of the most critical elements to a successful racing setup is your suspension. And that's why we're going to talk next about Bold Racing. So Bold Racing is a family-owned business that grew up in the racing world, and they specialize in providing cutting-edge custom suspensions with exceptional service at a great price. So if you're in the United States and you're looking for a custom setup for your race machine, whether it be a dirt bike, a UTV, or an ATV, get a hold of Bold Racing. All right, so I'm going to start off by giving you a phone number. The phone number is 702-506-5354. You can also email them bold.racing@yahoo.com. And yes, they are available on social media. Check them out on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Or if you just have any questions, feel free to email me, podcast@impactfuel.org. All right, welcome back, everybody. It is now Heat 2, and we are going to talk about sponsorship. So let's start off, John, by hearing who some of your current sponsors are.
Yeah, I've been fortunate enough to have some great support over the past couple seasons. Kind of putting my own program together, it's hard to kind of create funding and revenue to go racing. So I'd like to thank the McWhorter brothers for helping me out the past couple seasons. My family, I've got a great group of friends that have always helped me and supported me. Maxim Honda Yamaha, Merge Racing, Fly Racing, Eddie Lee, Robert Clifford, Recluse, FMF, 100%, Dunlop, Hammer Nutrition, Atlas Brace, Vertex, Hot Cams, Acerbis, Justified Cultures, 5 Star Roofing, and there's countless others. So just thank you to everybody who's helped me.
That's an impressive list there, and I always like to kind of dive in to a couple of the sponsors that intrigue me, and I usually pull out ones that are what are called non-endemic, which is outside of the industry. And there's a couple on there that I didn't recognize from like the motorsports industry, and I kind of wanted to maybe ask you a little bit more about them. So the first one, I don't know, maybe this is the motorsports industry, I just wasn't aware of it. McWhorter Brothers?
Yeah, that's basically Jeremy and Michael McWhorter, guys who work in the oil industry, and
okay.
And I actually met them. I have a trainer named Bo Boynton who's helped me since I was little, and I was trying to go racing, didn't really have the means to go race, and I kind of was talking to him, brainstorming and networking, and said, well, man, I've given some riding lessons to this guy, works in the oil field, he's a great dude, loves the sport, so he spoke to him about me, and then Bo gave me Jeremy's number, and I just contacted him, and it's kind of been history since then. We get along great. We're pretty much just like really good buddies at this point. But we have a great relationship, and if it wasn't for those guys, the past couple seasons definitely wouldn't have been possible.
Oh, that's awesome. I love hearing about those types of companies. And there's another one too. I think it was Hammer Nutrition. Is that what you said, Hammer Nutrition?
Mm-hmm.
So tell me a little bit about them. I mean, what's their product?
They make anything from electrolyte replacement drinks, recovery products.
Mm-hmm.
They're really big in endurance sports, cycling, motocross racing, running. I reached out to them. I've always liked their product. I've seen it at some bike shops and stuff, and I just went on their website and pretty much found a contact, emailed them, hey, who can I get in touch with about becoming forming a relationship with you guys, and emailed them my resume, and we actually, it's kind of a new relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I've only been sponsored by them this year, but it's kind of just cool to reach out to different companies and have some different people involved.
Yeah, definitely. And the last one that I wanted to follow up on was Five Star Roofing. So tell me a little bit about them.
Yeah, that's actually it's kind of the same thing as Jeremy and Michael McWhorter. I just met his name is Chad Mayo, Jeremy Nichols. It's a couple guys who just started a roofing business here in Texas, and I've been good friends with Chad now for a couple years, and he kind of was just like, man, if there's anything I can do for you, let me know. He actually reached out to me, so those guys help me out when they can, and it's kind of the same thing with a lot of these sponsors. It's just networking. If you have a will to go do something, you can't just sit there and wait for people to call you and offer support. It doesn't always work that way. So you kind of have to be social, network, and kind of brand yourself and find the support and find a way to go achieve what you want to achieve.
Yeah, certainly. I think it's cool that you have, some of these non-endemic sponsors, and I think we actually talked about this in the last episode that we did with Anna Glennon of TPJ Racing. So you're familiar with Anna. She's the one that connected us. But we talked a little bit about non-endemic sponsors, and there's such a big, just a big network of non-endemic sponsors that could be potentially introduced to motorsports world. I mean, you don't usually know if they're interested or not until you try. I mean, one of my favorite examples that I got back on episode 6 with Jason Snyder, he said that he approached Holiday Inn and said, hey, what would you think about, being a sponsor for, our racing program? And they said, oh, that sounds great. Yeah. So they basically will, anywhere he travels for his race team, they'll put him up in a Holiday Inn. And I just like, that is good. I mean, he needs it. They wanted it from an exposure standpoint. They wanted to have access to a new market. And I don't know. I think there's just a lot of opportunity out there to kind of expand the size of the current motorsports marketing bucket.
No, I agree, especially with motocross. It seems like most of the companies that are in that industry, exhaust companies and whatever it may be, gear, all those guys, they really don't have a lot of money to give away. So it's hard to really, as a privateer anyways, most of their efforts are going towards race teams, I feel like. So to do it kind of yourself, to bring in revenue and get some money flowing, you kind of have to go towards some of those non-endemic sponsors and do it that way. Kind of look outside the industry.
So in the pre-interview, you told me a little bit about a doctor that approached you. So let's kind of hear the story about how that sponsorship came about.
Yeah, I was at a Supercross, and Anna Glennon, someone you had on your show, actually approached me, said she got contacted about a doctor named Robert Clifford. He's actually the guy who's been handling all my injuries, my arm, my wrist, countless other incidents. So that was kind of cool to get reached out to from him. He kind of helps me out with some of my medical, and it's always good to have someone with that kind of knowledge who can help you with injuries and things of that nature.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, that's like, I don't know, it kind of blows my mind when I hear some of the out of the box methods that riders and racers have used from a sponsorship standpoint, like having a physician or something available to you for additional support. I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's just cool. I mean, even getting advice, like with my wrist, he's not a hand specialist, but he was able to, recommend me to the best hand specialist he knew, because, obviously he can network and use his contacts to find, hey, this is the guy I would trust to work on me, et cetera. So.
Right. There was, I wish I could say you were the only one that ever brought up, or the only guest that's ever brought up a doctor as like a supporter, but there was one other person, I can't remember, I think it was Brock Hoyer in episode 10. But either way, I think it was like his dad or his uncle or his mom or something was a doctor. I can't remember who it was, but you're the first one to bring up a doctor as a supporter outside of the family. I'm pretty certain. Well, cool. Hey, well, the next thing that I want to do is kind of just get your advice on how you would recommend someone reach out to a sponsor. I mean, what's something that people listening right now can do to make that contact with a sponsor?
I think for starters, just for instance, if you're in the motocross industry and there's companies that you want support through, oil companies, gear companies, helmet, start out. You can get on to Hook It, just to get a profile going, and so people can look you up and see your results and see videos, see where you've been racing, see where you're traveling. Also, I've done this a lot. Just go to companies' websites, and a lot of them have a sponsorship link. Send them your resume. You got to build a resume, just like any other job. If you're applying for a job, you got to have a resume. So build a resume and kind of, try and show what you bring to the table. Send it to the companies online. If they don't have a sponsorship link, hit the contact button or, the warranty button. Just send it to anybody and ask, hey, who can I get in touch with? I'd really like to be a representative of this company. So just kind of think outside the box and don't just take no for an answer. If you email them and they don't respond, maybe don't pester them every day, but every other week or so, just kind of keep at it. Or that's just my recommendation. Keep your name out there and stay active. Call people. In most cases, you're not just going to get a phone call and somebody offering you a sponsorship deal. You've got to go for it and go after it.
Yeah, it's very rare that you're gonna give somebody a ring and say, hey, who can I talk to for sponsorship? Oh, hey, that's me. Oh yeah, sure, we'll sponsor you. How much you want? Oh yeah, no problem. I mean it's almost all the time, unless you're like a Ken Block or a Travis Pastrana or something like that. You're gonna have to have multiple conversations, build that relationship, and maybe even before you get to that point, it might take you a certain amount of time just to find the right person to talk to.
Right. And like if you're not winning championships and stuff like that, you've got to show why you're valuable to the companies and what you can do to, bring a return investment almost. Why is sponsoring me going to be beneficial for you?
Right. Well, cool. So we talked about a lot of really good things that have happened with your sponsors and your motorsports career, but maybe take us to a point when things didn't go well with the sponsor. Do you have an example of that? Probably leaving out the name of the sponsor.
Honestly, I haven't had too many bad dealings with sponsors or people that have helped me. I kind of try and learn from other people's mistakes. The one piece of advice I can give somebody dealing with sponsors or companies is just don't burn bridges. Always, even if you're going to switch to a different company that's a conflict of interest, keep that contact and just fulfill your obligations. Don't burn bridges, because you burn one bridge and that guy, he may spread a bad word about you and then your name becomes toxic.
Yeah.
I'm trying to say something, but I just can't say it the right way,
Yeah, I mean, I think the way I look at this one is, if you burn a bridge or frustrate somebody or make a bad name for yourself, that name can be spread very quickly, and not only just by word of mouth, but this industry is fairly small when you think about it, and people move from company to company. And the person whose bridge you just burned, they might be at the next company that you put in your resume to, and they'll remember that. So I think it is very important and to keep your reputation professional, and that you uphold your obligations. That does not mean you have to stay with the same sponsors, for forever. That doesn't mean that you can't change sponsors, but you do have to think about how you're going to make that change. I know we talked about this in episode 19 of this podcast with Tony Jenkins. So if you want some examples of how to do that and you're listening right now, feel free to go back and download that episode and you can hear a little bit more about that.
I agree with what you said. You want to keep a positive, lasting reputation throughout the industry, whether you think you're going to be a part of that company again or not, or whatever it may be. You know what? That guy may turn into a different rep at a different company, or you never know. So just make sure you uphold yourself to the most professional way you can.
Yeah, definitely. Well, John, next thing I want to know is a little bit about your social media strategy. That's such a big part of what, you know, the sponsors look for, and almost every sponsor that I've ever talked to has discussed social media. So, I mean, what are the different platforms that you focus on, and, you know, how do you like plan or share information?
So I'm on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I mainly use Instagram. I feel like everybody's on Instagram.
Yep.
I try and just post, you know, multiple times a week. Not necessarily just tagging all my sponsors, although I do that a lot. You know, I try and kind of be creative and post different types of content and kind of let everybody stay aware of what I'm doing. And I just try and post frequently and kind of spread the love. You know, if I go mountain biking, I try and post a picture with my Hammer Nutrition water bottle and maybe tag them. But you know, I do a lot of sponsor plugs, but I try not to just post a picture of a helmet and think Fly Racing or whatever it may be. I kind of try and let people keep up with me and just kind of mesh it with my everyday life and kind of try and be myself and show my personality through my social media.
Somebody who does this really well, and we had actually talked about them in the pre-interview a little bit, was Amy Hood. So Amy Hood was featured on episode 7 of this podcast. And she does these Instagram stories, and she's got a massive social media following, but she does these Instagram stories where you don't even know what's happening. Like, she'll incorporate some of her sponsors' products, and then you realize later, oh, wait, that's one of her sponsors. Like, oh, that's clever. Especially now I really try to pay attention to that stuff. And it's really cool how some people will factor that in.
Almost like some subliminal advertising.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the best way, right? You know, I've one of the examples that at least I think it worked out well, and I think my sponsor did, but one of the roof that's on my Polaris RZR was made by an awesome company that's in Michigan, where I'm from, and they're called One Stop Performance. And you know that they hooked me up with this roof, and it just has such a cool look to it. But on the back, they have their logo like laser cut out of the back, and every time when the sun is in like a certain spot on the sky, it just reflects through that logo, that laser etched logo, and onto the back windshield of my Polaris RZR. And I took a picture of that, and I was like, this is the coolest picture ever, and I just tagged them. But I mean, you can tell, like, I don't know if they thought about that or if ahead of time, but if they did, it just worked out so good. But every time I take pictures now of that RZR, if I notice, like, I'll see it in the background, that just little reflection on the windshield, and I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I'm being clever with all this. You know, maybe I'm really promoting my sponsor the right way.
Yeah, you haven't forgotten the name of the roof on your RZR for sure.
Yeah, right.
You've probably at least looked them up a little more, seen what other products they made and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Well, cool. That's good stuff. Yeah, so you had also mentioned Instagram, right? That as being one that a lot of people are on. I've ran several polls within the Sponsored Rider Club, which is on Facebook, and every time Instagram is like outpacing Facebook significantly, and then Twitter, from a usage standpoint in the motorsports industry, is probably on the bottom of the pack. But yeah, Instagram seems to be a pretty popular platform right now.
I didn't realize how I guess crucial that social media was, and for sponsors. And then, you know, here this year I've actually had a couple sponsors email me and say, hey, post this link and show everybody our new product on this page. You know, they email us all their athletes, or you know, even talking to some of the companies I'm sponsored by. I ask them, you know, what are you guys exactly looking for when y'all you know, select riders to ride for your program? Well, one of the big things we've been looking at is, you know, social media. Are they keeping our product, you know, relevant on their page or not? Or, you know, can people see us when they see them? So that's a big deal, I believe.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you think of, let's say, 10 years ago when social media was minimal to nothing, when sponsors wanted to reach an audience, there was only a couple platforms for that. I mean, primarily television. And if you look at, like, say, the cost of like running a commercial on a television program versus the cost of sponsoring a rider and having them put basically the company's commercial in front of a bunch of eyeballs, that's what they're comparing against. So they're going to look at it from a dollar value standpoint, like, how can I get my commercial out in front of as many people as possible? And if it's cheaper or more cost effective to have it come through sponsored athletes or riders, then man, that's what they're going to do. And that, I think that's why we see social media as such a powerful platform for sponsors to utilize in their, you know, their athlete programs.
And you think about it, like, for what I'm doing, I race the motocross, supercross series. I haven't won any races. So, I mean, when you watch the races, normally they're showing the leaders. I mean, they don't normally highlight a guy in 15th place, 13th place. So, before social media, before, you know, internet, it was like, what use am I to them, really? You know, if he's not getting any television time, you know, our logos aren't getting shown. So it's almost like social media is allowed, you know, privateers and guys who don't have factory rides, or kind of allow them to market themselves and brand themselves and create value.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely leveled the playing field. I mean, I've used this example before, and I think I'll continue to do it. Have you ever heard of Larry Enticer?
I have not.
So Larry Enticer is big in the snowmobile world, and literally, I don't know when he came out, like 5-6 months ago, and this would be in 2017, so early 2017, and he basically is a guy with a mullet that made a viral video of him like jumping an Enticer, and he called himself Larry Enticer, and it went viral. This guy's social media account blew up. He started getting sponsors. Like,
you're talking about Just Send It, right?
Yeah, that's him. Just send it. Yeah,
guy.
that's him. That's the guy.
Okay,
I
yeah.
mean, he created, like, on accident, he created a whole new hashtag of send it, like,
Right.
just send it. This whole new movement. And yeah, I mean, if you follow his social media account, you will see him wearing, like, he's still sporting the mullet and some other things, but he might have, like, I don't know what sponsor off the top of my head, but let's just say some really cool, like, fly racing gloves, or, you know, he'll be hanging out with the guys from MBRP and, like, testing out their sleds. And it's just incredible what social media can do, and to kind of level that playing field.
Yeah, and that's like Ronnie Mack, kind of the same deal.
Yeah, yep.
I don't know if you've looked at any of his videos.
Well, here, tell us about him, and then that way people listening, if they know or don't know, they can hear the examples.
It's pretty much just it's a guy who rides a two-stroke, you know, open face helmet, kind of like Larry. You know, wears overalls, kind of goon rides, but he still goes fast. You just have to see it. It's hilarious. It's just like kind of like what Larry does. You have to check him out on Instagram or YouTube. He's got all kinds of videos. Ronnie Mack.
Yeah, and it's just interesting because, you know, they were able to turn this stuff into a business, you know, and I think that's really crucial for people to understand. I've actually been trying to get Larry Enticer on this show. I've messaged him a couple times, like, hey, we want to come and talk about how you, like, built this wild viral social media following.
That'd be interesting to know. You know, how he came up with it, and, you know, like the videos and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm working on it, but I haven't gotten there yet.
That'd be a good episode.
Yeah, I'm still picking away at them, but maybe one day I'll get there. But All right, well, cool. Well, hey, the next thing I actually want to do is hop into the main event. So we've already had a little bit of conversation about this earlier on, but I want to dig in a little bit deeper. So essentially, the reason why I have this section as part of these interviews is I know that there's a lot of mental preparation that you have to do to get ready to reach out to a sponsor or to, I don't know, just feel good about yourself in the process, or be your own you, or be unique, or put yourself out there. I feel like there's a lot that goes into that. So I want to kind of pull out examples of the mental struggles that people kind of go through with sponsorship. So the first thing though that I want to talk about is like a big obstacle. What would you say has been an obstacle that you've had to overcome in your motorsports career?
Yeah, for me in my motorsports career, it's always kind of been tough for me to find the funds to go racing, because I've always had a hard time approaching sponsors or potential sponsors, maybe or just businesses, whoever may be, and asking for help financially, because I work hard, I train hard, I put everything into it on the training aspect, but I've kind of had to learn here recently how to try and market myself and call people and handle things on the sponsorship end. So I just, I think for a lot of athletes, just understanding that it's you do have value, but it's a two-way street. I think some athletes just look at, well, what can this company do for me? Well, if a company sends you six sets of, a brake company sends you 6 rotors, that's cool, but nobody's going to see that. You have to, maybe market them on social media or just, do things that bring value back to the company and kind of market yourself in that aspect, like we were talking about earlier. So just kind of understanding that it's how are you of worth to a company, and presenting that to them.
Yeah, it's something I talked about when I did get to interview Travis Pastrana and Jolene Van View. I asked them both, what's harder, racing or sponsorship? And I think everybody knows like the rigor and the physical preparation and like the mental fortitude that it takes to race. And they both said sponsorship. They're like, it's just they're like, I feel comfortable, I feel natural in the racing world. I know how to prep for that. There's a recipe for it. I don't have the recipe for sponsorship. Which is, I mean, honestly, that's why this podcast even exists, is so that we can talk about this stuff, because I don't know if there is a recipe right now, or at least not one that we know how to write down. So yeah, it's definitely a challenging thing.
No, it's tough. I mean, especially if you're kind of doing a lot of it yourself, because racing's a full-time job and training's a full-time job, and then the sponsorship aspect of it is almost a full-time job as well. If you're doing it correctly. So, it is tough. And like you mentioned, if you have a trainer or you've been racing for 10 or 15 years, I mean, you know how to ride, you know how to train and prep for races. It's not always, you're dealing with people. So it's tough to be social, especially, like myself, I'm shy a little bit, and it's kind of hard to just break out of that shell and approach people and put yourself out there, because not everybody's going to be interested, but you just kind of have to not worry about failure and try and just keep knocking on the door till someone answers, I guess.
Yeah, certainly. So I want to dive in a little bit to how you were saying you're shy, because I guarantee there's people listening right now like, I'm shy too. How do I work on that? And Anna Glennon talked a little bit about you actually in being shy and breaking out of your shell as well in episode 40. And I think that's a big milestone, or a big thing to overcome. So, I mean, would you be open to chatting a little bit about how you kind of overcame some of the shyness?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say overcame it. I mean, I'm still kind of working on that. But I mean, every time, it's getting better, but a lot of times I'll go to make a phone call to somebody I don't know from the company, and I'm just like, I sit there for a while thinking about it, hyping it up to be a big deal. I mean, you almost just, what I'm learning is just kind of, they're all people just like you and me. So just call them and have a conversation with them. If you're kind of like me and you call somebody and you kind of forget what to say, think about it beforehand, make some notes, of some topics you want to talk about. And, that's kind of it to me. Just, practicing like that, prepping before you make calls, prepping before you make emails, and kind of having your thoughts together and, just networking and being a little more social,
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of good examples of that. I mean, one, you're on this podcast right now, right? For someone who's like, a natural shy person, that could probably be pretty intimidating, even though it's just some dude from Michigan in his basement. It still can be a little funky. And I mean, I think you were also on the Pulp MX show, right?
Yeah. And for me, like going on a podcast, at first it's almost like, well, what am I going to say? There's going to be hundreds or, certain podcasts, if not thousands of people listening. Like
ours is millions. For people listening right now, it's millions.
Well, you don't want to come across, you kind of get worried about coming across a certain way.
Yeah.
And maybe people not liking you or, so just kind of putting that behind you and just being yourself, I think is something you can take from this podcast, if nothing else.
Well, cool. Well, hey, who would you say has been your biggest supporter and why?
Well, as far as sponsor racing, I would have to say there's been a lot of great people, great friends.
But there's only one biggest.
There's only one biggest. Well, that's hard to say because the past couple seasons it changes from years before that. There's different times in my life where there's been influential people.
Nobody ever commits to one in this podcast. Nobody has ever. They're always
because there's probably a list of 100 people, so that have helped me at one point or another, and it's all been at key moments. So I can't answer that.
All right, this is the answer I heard. Pass. All right, let's go to the next one. Who would you say inspires you the most? There's
a lot of people. My mom's a big inspiration to me. She's always kind of, she's always instilled in me, don't give up, obviously work hard. If you're going to do something, do it right. I've watched her, get her master's degree while she works full time and, tends to our family. And, but, I've also got, like the McWaters, my trainer, Bo, they've all inspired and encouraged me to not give up on my dream. They work hard and, they've kind of beat it in my head. Like, hey, you've got a dream, you've got talent, you can do it. We're going to help you. Let's, give it your all. And cause, I've thought about just going to college versus racing and trying to pursue a different career, and they're like, man, you're young, go for it. So, there's a lot of people who have influenced me to, and inspired me throughout my life and my career.
Oh, that's awesome. That's really good.
That's a roundabout answer, I guess. I really didn't answer your question, but.
Well, it's not that you didn't answer, it's that you answered it wrong. And everybody answers this one wrong. The answer is Josh Wiese, host of the sponsored Rider Club podcast. I need to do a better job coaching people ahead of time in a pre-interview.
Oh, yes.
Dang.
You need to send that in the email.
Yeah,
send it in the email. Put right down there at the bottom, like next.
So
to
really,
it's
me. It's me that's failed.
No.
Which isn't inspiring. So in a roundabout way, you did answer the question correctly.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's cool. I promised this earlier too that I would ask a little bit more about your goals because we mentioned it very early on. But I'll ask it this way: what would you say is next in your motorsports career?
So my biggest goal is I want to ride for a team. That's always been my, I guess, dream, you could say, is to, not have to go to the races in a van, and kind of rough it, some of the guys who are winning and, top 10, they ride for these factory elite teams with the best equipment. So that's always kind of been a goal of mine, is getting a ride. But, in order to do that, results wise, my goals, I want to be in the top 10. I've just always, this past season, been right outside the top 10, 15th, 13th, 14th, 16th. So this year, I really want to have a good off season, work hard, change some things in my program, and be in that top 10 consistently, and open some eyes so that I can get that, factory ride, or, whatever it may be, some team support of some sort. So I guess that's my goal for next season, is kind of take it to the next level, I guess, in my performance on the track.
One thing I liked about what you just said there too is you put some definition around the next level. So a lot of times I hear people say it, I say it too, but they'll say, oh, I want to get to the next level. And I think it's good to break down, what does that actually mean? So for you, I think one of the things, at least you said, the next level is moving from top 15 racer to top 10. That's something you can track, you can measure. Okay, so let's say you're top 13. Oh, sweet. I went from 15 to top 13. Next year, my goal still remains the same, top 10. And I just like having a little bit of definition around those goals.
Yeah, and it's something you can monitor and track, and you can look back at races and you can see, what you need to do to improve. I have a pretty clear idea, obviously, other than go faster, of what would help my results. So that's something I'm going to work on this off season before, January rolls around. So hopefully I can be a better racer for 2018.
Yeah, certainly. Well, cool. Well, hey, we're at the finish line now. And hey, you know what? I don't normally give people a finish, but you finished in the top 10 on this race. So, consider that as part of your goals for meeting your goal for next year. No?
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way?
Yeah. Hey, it's a step.
It's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, of course.
No, it is time to wrap up now. So I want to kind of get a summary from you. What's one item that you would like the audience to take away from this conversation?
Honestly, just don't give up. If you want something bad enough, you'll make it happen. So just be persistent and stay true to who you are, and I'll enjoy it along the way. But you can't, if you keep, like I said, if you keep knocking on the door, you can't be denied. So.
How do we connect with you?
I'm on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. My Instagram and Twitter are at the little @ John Short 88, all lowercase. And then my Facebook is just John Short.
Perfect. Well, cool. Well, hey, thanks for joining us today, John. And I'm going to leave you with this. Have fun and ride safe.
Hey, thank you for having me on the podcast. I appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Sponsored Rider Club podcast. Make sure that you leave a rating and a review on iTunes, and also subscribe so that you don't miss future episodes. Got a lot of awesome guests lined up already, and we're excited to get them in front of you. Next thing I want to talk to you about, though, is our Facebook group. It's called Sponsored Rider Club, and if you want some behind-the-scenes looks at this podcast and also access to pretty much all the guests and a ton of other riders and racers that are just looking to better market themselves to sponsors, you can go onto that group and ask questions and learn a lot of good stuff. So to get access to that group, just search Sponsored Rider Club on Facebook and request to join. I will be reviewing that request. Another thing I want to tell you about is Impact Fuel. It's a community for power sports enthusiasts to transform their riding experiences with sponsor-funded charitable donations. You can find out more how to donate your mileage or your podiums at impactfuel.org. Specifically, look at the FAQ page. There's also a lot of information how to do it on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Very easy to do. Check it out. Donate those miles. All right, that's all I have for you today. I'll leave you with this. Have fun and ride safe.